Yo, you the first one, JJ? A game, what up, maybe? A game, we gotta chop it up offline, man. For real, for real. I'm gonna definitely reach out to you, shoot you an email or something, or let's DM each other, let's exchange numbers in the DMs, man, and let's definitely have a conversation offline, man. For real. ASAP Killy, thanks for joining in. There go my dude. We're gonna wait a couple more minutes before we get started, Si. Sound Quality Studios, thanks for joining in. Croc, what up, baby? Always on time. Appreciate you. Candy Coated, thanks for joining in. Drizzy G, 2023. Appreciate you. So I need you to put your thinking cap on tonight. I got some questions coming at the end. You're going to have to really think. 20 years in the game, boy. I need you to put your thinking cap on for real. Well, anybody who know me know I like to be punctual, so thank you to everybody's here. Welcome to the Positive Impact Podcast. I am Terrell Dozier. Tonight is a special night for me as we're going to sit down and talk to one of my oldest friends, one of the best young minds still in the NBA. So at this time, I want to introduce Paul SIlas, associate head coach for the Dallas Mavericks. There he is. What up, baby?
What's happening?
Ain't nothing, man. We just out here, man, trying to make this stuff happen, man. You know what it is. I appreciate you getting on with me tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Nah, no question about it. So we're gonna jump right in like I do. I don't like to waste no time. So take us back first to young Paul SIlas out in Westchester County, and tell me how you fell in love with the game, and take me through high school, take me through prep school, take me on a journey through college.
Well, I grew up in New York, and my father is Paul SIlas, for those who don't know, who played in the NBA for 16 years and then coached in the NBA for 20 some odd years. So I grew up with it, grew up in it. And at the time, he was the assistant coach of the Nets and then the Knicks and then the Nets again. So I was able to grow up in Westchester County and stay in the same school district from seventh grade on. So I went to a school called John Jay High School in Katona, New York, and played basketball there and enjoyed it and made some good friends. But I needed another year. I wasn't ready to go on and play college basketball, which was my goal at the time. And so I looked around and somehow, some way ended up at St. Thomas More with
Yes, sir.
a great crew
Yes,
of
sir.
fellas. Jerry Quinn, the legendary coach there, and he was like, at the time, I wanted to play. And he was like, I can't guarantee that you're going to play. I'll guarantee I'll give you any opportunity that I can give you, but I can't guarantee that you're going to play and have success. So I like that at the time. You know, everybody's telling you what you want to hear, and you actually have someone telling you, you know, I'm going to help you get better. And that's what I wanted, and that's what I needed at the time.
Right.
So went to St. Thomas More and played with guys like you and Steve Frazier and Charles Minlin from St. John's and a bunch of other guys, and enjoyed it. You know, came off the bench and struggled and really had a hard time when I first got there as far as the basketball part. And you know, me coming from, I was a big fish in a small pond in Westchester County,
Mm-hmm.
and going to a situation where there was times where I wouldn't even play,
Yeah.
and there were guys who were better than me on the team, and I had to work hard and have a few things break my way. But the main thing that I got from St. Thomas More, aside from friends like you and a bunch of other great guys that I met, was concentrating on the academic side, because I always was a decent student, but I didn't put the work in. In high school, it just came easy to me. So um, getting through high school was easy for me. But going to St. Thomas More, we had a 3-hour study hall, and it was very much geared to playing basketball and getting your work done. And that's what I needed at the time. I was skinny and um, a decent basketball player, but I hadn't fulfilled my full potential on the court. I mean, on the court as well as in the classroom. So I thought it was going to be a basketball experience for me, but it ended up being an academic experience for me, where I really buckled down and learned how to take notes and learned how to study and understood what it took in order to be a good student as well as basketball player. So that was a life-changing time for me. St. Thomas More was, because you know how it is. You coast through high school. High school can be easy, whether it's teachers letting you off the hook, or you in a small town where you're the big man on campus and people are going to give you, you know, an advantage here, an advantage there, and you go to a place where you really need to buckle down.
Right.
It hits you over the head, and it hit me over the head hard, but it was great. I made, like I said, I made great friends. Buckled down and got a good SAT score at the time, and had really good grades, and played hoop, and had an opportunity to go to pretty much any Ivy League school I wanted to, and ended up at Brown University, and that's another story. But it was a really, really great experience going. Not going to college after you graduate from high school is hard, because all your friends are looking at you like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? You're the best player in the town. You're the best, one of the best players in the county, and you're not even going to college.
Right.
so, it was eye opening. It was an awakening time for me. It was a time to buckle down on the court as well as in the classroom, and it ended up being a time that really changed my life to the point where I am now.
Right. No question. So for our people who joined us a little late, we talking to Steve SIlas, associate head coach for the Dallas Mavericks. Shout out to all the St. Thomas More boys that are on, that we was in the grind with.
Yes, sir.
Yes, shout out to Leek Brown from UConn. Shout out Reggie Freeman. High five for showing up. We appreciate everybody. Coop, what's going on, man? So you go to Brown for 4 years, you know what I mean? And, you come from a great prep program, and, you go there with expectations to play, and it doesn't go as well as you think, you know what I mean? So there wasn't no transfer portal back then, you know what I mean? And you're unhappy and everything like that, but you stuck around for 4 years and got a degree from Brown University. So in the beginning, why did you choose Brown in the first place? And then, like, what made you stay even though things weren't going the way that you wanted them to?
For me, it was between Brown and Columbia. And at the time, my dad was assistant coach of the Knicks, and I didn't want to go and kind of be in his shadow again. I've always grown up as Paul SIlas' son,
Yeah.
which is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's opened so many doors for me, and the respect that people have for him and the name that he has established is something that I cherish forever. But at the time, when you're young, you kind of want to do your own thing, have your own name, make your own name. So Brown was a place for me. It was halfway between Boston and New York, and a good place, as well as one of my teammates from St. Thomas More, Jerome Greer, was going to Bryant College, which is right up the road. So we were like, hey, we're about to take over Providence, both of us together. I'll be a Brown, you be a Bryant, and we're going to do it.
No
And
doubt.
I got to Brown, and it was hard. School was hard, and basketball was hard. And coming from St. Thomas More, where we were the best team in the country, and everybody at St. Thomas More thought that they were, one of the best players in the
Yeah,
country.
we wasn't trying to sit.
Exactly. So leaving there, we all thought we were really good.
Absolutely.
And once I got to Brown, and I was a freshman amongst seniors who had been waiting their turn to play, and we had a freshman class of guys who were better than me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, there wasn't really the transfer thing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just stuck with it. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't really know what it was at the time. I
Yeah.
was miserable. I
Yeah.
wasn't doing well in school. I was really struggling with the schoolwork because I, I just thought I could do my 3 hours of study hall
Right.
like I
Yeah.
did at the prep and be
Yeah.
fine. But when you're in an Ivy League institution, it's not the same. It's very
Absolutely.
different. You have to go to study hall. You have to go to office hours. You have to go to class and that kind of thing. And St. Thomas More was all boys, and you go to Brown, and there's girls there, and there's
Yeah.
parties. I mean, there's so much more in college that you have to deal with. And at St. Thomas More, we were insulated from all that stuff. It was hoop,
Yeah.
and it was schoolwork. And then you go to a place where there's all these other things, especially a place like Brown, where there's there's so much diversity, not in only race, but financial and the way people think, and just so many different people. So
Right.
it was definitely very hard, and I really struggled at first, and I was ready to transfer because I wasn't playing and I wasn't doing well in school. But I talked to my dad, and my dad was like, hey, you're going to stick with it. This is,
Yeah.
you worked so hard to get to this point. You're not just going to just drop it and say, hey, it was a good try. You're gonna make it one way or another. That's what you've always done. That's what you're gonna do in this situation. And that's how I've always been. I've always been kind of like a slow starter. When I
Mm-hmm.
got to St. Thomas More, I struggled at first. I was sick all the time,
Yeah.
and I wasn't really confident with my basketball game. And by the end, I was one of the better players. When
Yeah.
we were in the
Mm-hmm.
championship game, I was in the game. Down the stretch. So
Yes, you were.
um,
Yes, you were.
I've always kind of been a slow starter, and my dad knew that about
Mm-hmm.
me. So when it came to Brown and staying there, even though basketball wasn't going well, and I played a little bit my freshman year, but not a lot. And I actually came off the bench most of my career at Brown,
Mm-hmm.
but I just stuck with it, man, and it really ended up being a great place for me.
Awesome, no doubt. Let me shout out a couple of people. My young boy Reese Brown, UNLV commit. Thanks for coming on, and my man Jason Jett coming on, man. See the work that you're doing from a distance, Jason, man. Keep working with my nieces out there, man. Take them to the top, man. Take them to the
Yes,
top,
sir.
man.
Official Kai and K.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. So, so after Brown, you stay up in Rhode Island and you get up there and you start working for the Retired Players Association. Talk about what that was like and the people that you met through that.
So right after Brown, I was looking for a job, and that's another thing. Once you get out of college, I mean, most people want to hoop. If you played in college, you want to go and play professional somewhere, and I did. The overseas camps and all that stuff, and it just didn't work out for me. I didn't have an opportunity to play overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main alums from Brown, his name is Dennis Coleman, was the head of the National Basketball Retired Players Association. So I was just calling him after I graduated, calling him, and there were times where he wouldn't return my call, and I'd just keep calling, and I just needed a job. He was in Providence at the time. I was in Providence, and I needed any job. I didn't have to be with Retired Players Association. Do you know somebody with the phone company? Do you know
Yeah.
somebody who's with some law firm? Anything.
Right.
I'll just take a
Right.
job. And sure enough, his assistant left with the Retired Players Association, and I stepped in. And at the time, that was shoot, 97. So, so I did a good job to get one of the retired players to donate a computer, that had internet access,
Yeah. Right.
and but I did everything for that organization. I did trips for Retired Players Association for retired players. We took a team to China in '98 with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson and Tom Chambers and Frank Bukowski and Darnell Valentine, like a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
We went to China, and at that time, basketball in China, especially like NBA and people going over and doing clinics and playing games, that wasn't really a thing like it is
Right.
now.
Right.
The access to China wasn't nearly what it is now. So that was kind of like a groundbreaking thing that we went and took that group of players to China. But in addition to that, I was, doing the newsletter, typing up the newsletter, folding mailings,
Right.
licking envelopes, taking checks to the bank to deposit them, doing tickets for the All-Star game
Right.
for the retired players, tickets and rooms, and doing our ex-NBA gala. And I mean, I did everything, and it was great for me because I got to touch a little bit of everything that I had kind of prepared for going to this point. So, um, growing up as my dad's son, I knew a lot of these guys. I knew Oscar Robertson, I knew Dave DeBusschere, I knew Dave Cowens, I knew Dave Bing, and and to be in that position and be able to learn from those guys and work for those guys was very, very important for me and great for me. But it was also humbling because, I was the low man on the totem pole. Like I was getting coffee. I was staying late so they could make sure that the people who were cleaning the office would get in.
Right.
It was no joke. I was taking the bus to work. I get on
Yeah.
the bus. I go down to Kennedy Plaza in Providence. I get off the bus, go in. I walk up to Brown and play lunchtime hoops. And I walk back, and it was definitely there were great experiences as far as the trips and the All-Star game and stuff. But there were some tough times doing that, but as well, just because you want to do all the cool stuff,
Right.
but it's the stuff that you got to grind through that makes it to where you can do the other stuff. So
Absolutely.
all the preparation that I put up until that point was definitely important and paid off. So I could, be able to format the the newsletter and
Yeah.
do all sorts of stuff. So
Right.
it ended up paying off later down the line where I'm able to do a bunch of different things and understand the importance of being kind of a jack of all trades.
Right. No question about it. So, I believe it was 1999 came around, and um, Big Paul got the job with the Charlotte Hornets, and says, "Hey, you want to be a scout?" You know what I mean? Which kind of became the genesis for you in the NBA. So obviously you took it, and so talk about that. You were a scout for 2 years before you became, I believe at the time, the youngest assistant coach in the NBA. So what was it like? What was it like scouting? You know what I'm saying? And what were your goals? That you were trying to achieve then. Did you have your eye on the assistant coaching thing, or were you just content with being a scout at the time?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My dad, like you said, he took over. Dave Cowens had to quit mid-season, and my dad took over for him. So I was just excited for him to be a head coach again after all the things he had gone through, all the years he had been an assistant coach. So he took over, and we were cheerleading for him, and he ended up getting the full-time job. And like you said, he called me up and was like, "You want to come work for me? You're going to start at the bottom." I was like, "Yeah, let's go. Whatever you need me to do."
Right.
So I did college and advanced scouting. And the college part is the scouting that pretty much everybody knows about, where you're going to college games and evaluating talent, doing reports and turning the reports in, and then flying to the next city or next college town and doing the same thing. Being in Charlotte was great for that because I was able to go to, Carolina, Duke, Wake, NC State, South Carolina, Clemson, all those places were driving distance for me. So every night I was on the road going to another game. It was really a good experience, and you get to learn a lot about players, and you look at it differently because when you're in it and you're playing, you look at players very differently than when you're expected to be an expert on a guy's game, or how can he fit in, how can he help our organization as a player. In addition to that, I did the advanced scouting because back then there really weren't, big scouting staffs. There was myself, Jeff Bauer, who is now GM or assistant GM with the Phoenix Suns, and Kip Bass, who is Bob Bass, who was the GM at the time. It's his son. It was just us three doing all the scouting. So with the advanced part, it was, which is going to an NBA game, you get to sit courtside and you're trying to get the offensive calls of the opposing team that you're about to play, any defensive coverages, draw the diagrams, send everything in, and you're on to the next city. So, so at the time, it was different than it is now because now there's so much video access. So you can
Yeah.
go into a game and you're prepared. My first game that I went to, I will never forget. I went to see Boston, the Boston Celtics in Boston, and I didn't know what I was about to see. I hadn't seen them. I didn't know any calls. I didn't know any plays that they ran. So I went to the game and I was struggling. I could get the calls, but I couldn't get the diagrams. It was just moving so fast. I couldn't
Right.
draw the diagrams. So, so I did my best and finished my left the arena and I had to draw the diagrams and I was struggling so badly. It was really hard for me to put the play call with the diagram. So I just put something together and I had to fax it because we didn't have email back then. So I had to fax it to Mark Osowski, who was assistant coach at that time. So I was at Kinko's. It was like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and I couldn't get my diagrams right, and I couldn't fax it, and I couldn't get the fax to work, and this and that. And I finally got it. It was like 4 in the morning. I finally got it done, and Mark, he called me in the morning. He was like, "You struggled last night, huh?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I was struggling." He was like, "Yeah, that's how it is when you first start, and
Yeah.
it's just like anything else. It's like when you first get to college where everything's moving so fast on the court, and then things slow down for you, and then you get to guys who make it to the league, rookies. Everything's moving so fast. You get it to, and everything slows down for you, and then that's how it was for me. I was going to a game basically every night. So I had a crash course and it finally slowed down for me. But all of those skills that I learned as far as, time management, being able to do a bunch of different things, being organized,
Yes.
being punctual, all of those things came into fruition with that job, doing the scouting. And I loved it. Like I could have scouted for years.
Yeah.
It just so happened that I didn't do it for very long, but it was it was a grind. And I think I ended up going to like 200 games that year and doing 200 reports and really learning to love it. Because, like I said, at the time when I first started, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to work with my dad and be
Yeah.
around the game.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I would love it the way that I did, but you gotta love it if you're going to all those games. And it seems like it's a glamorous job, and it's not at all.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
hard, and blessed to have it, but it's a grind. It's a hard job, and it's gotten a lot easier with video and
Yeah.
synergy and all this the technology, email,
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Absolutely.
It's a lot
Absolutely.
easier now than it
Absolutely.
was then. But a lot of the guys I scouted with Eric Spoelstra. We were on the road together. Steve Clifford, I was on the road with him. So a lot of guys who are doing it now and head coaches now, I was on the road with them 20 years ago. So you
Mhm.
know, it was good.
Nice. Nice. So then you move up to the bench, and you start becoming, like I said, the youngest assistant coach in the game. So I think you guys were in Charlotte for a few years as the assistant coach, and then you guys move out to Cleveland. Tell me about your experience coming up. Being now you're on the bench now, and great teams in Charlotte, great players in Charlotte. Now you move out to Cleveland, and you gotta work with this kid coming in that's supposed to change the game. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, well, there's a couple layers to it. The first one was coming in as an assistant coach and you're 27 years old, and there are players on the team older than you. And I'm trying to coach PJ Brown and Stacey Augmon and David Wesley and guys like that, and I'm younger than they are.
Right,
That's hard. Not
right,
alone, let alone being the son of the head coach. That's not easy either.
right.
And it's funny looking back on it. Like people always like, oh well, you had your dad to help you out, and he definitely opened the door for me and gave me an opportunity that I definitely wouldn't have had any other way.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back on it, as someone now who helps people get positions or who's asking other people for help for a guy. Um, I don't know if I would have done it for my son if I had a son because of the scrutiny that he would have to go through. And, like I wasn't really prepared at the time. Like I was smart, I guess, and I was a hard worker,
Mm-hmm.
but um, you know, like he took a big leap of faith to give me that job that early.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily I was kind of able to find my way and make it work. But I'm sure it wasn't an easy decision for him to give me that job. I would have to ask him. I'm not sure if it was or not, but yeah, going in and dealing with BD as
Yeah.
a second year player and David Wesley, who was a vet, and
Mm-hmm.
my first year we had made the trade with Miami, so we traded Ricky Davis and Anthony Mason, rest in peace, for
Oh,
PJ and Mash, and it was a great trade. Ended up being a great trade for us, and we actually played them in the first round of the playoffs that year,
mm-hmm.
and we beat them in the first round, and it was great. We actually swept them, and that was so much fun. I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was, doing my scouting reports, and I was super organized. And whenever anybody needed to get some shots up, I was there. I was the one helping them get shots up. And
Yeah.
if there's anything that needed to be done, especially with the staff so small at the
Mm-hmm.
time,
Mm-hmm.
you could do a lot. Like right
Right.
now, we have player development coaches, and there's interns, and there's shooting coaches, and all that stuff. And back then, there were just three assistant coaches and a head coach.
Yeah.
So it was a great opportunity for me to, number one, get close to the players and you know, kind of feel my way out, try drills, and they just wanted someone out there with them, so I
Right.
could, put them through a workout and watch them get better, and that's really where it starts to get fun when you see a guy get better, like Barron going from not playing at all or not starting his rookie year to becoming an all-star down the road. Um, is gratifying because I was the one flying out to LA and and working them out and going to the men's gym at UCLA and spending long hours in the gym with him and other guys. So uh, that it was a great situation because we had guys like him and we had guys like Mash, but we also had guys like Eddie Robinson who were young guys
Yeah.
and really, really had success. And that was one of the gifts that my dad had as a coach because he could take those young guys, give them confidence, and they would play really well. So Eddie
Players coach,
Robinson,
man.
yeah, Brad
Yeah.
Miller, guys like that who actually ended up having Lee Nailon, guys having good careers, but they were young, and I was young right there with them. So
Yes, sir.
that was that was good. From there, we moved to New Orleans with the team, and that was a great experience being down there. And then I experienced the first time in my career getting fired, which isn't great. Um,
Right.
it definitely wasn't the last time, but it was the first time, and you know it's a hard thing because you're looking at yourself and you're like, what could I have done better? What could I, why did this happen to me? And part of it was because I was attached to my dad. Part of it we had a new ownership group that came in, and a lot of times they need their own people. So it is what it is. So we went to Cleveland because we had success in Charlotte, and my dad was known as a player's coach. And like you said, I was blessed to have the opportunity to work with LeBron as a rookie. And at the time, we had a great group of young guys. So I went from Stacey Augmon, Bryce Drew, PJ,
Yeah.
Mash to LeBron, Dajuan Wagner, Darius
Darius
Miles,
Miles.
yeah,
Yeah, man.
Sagana Diop,
Yes.
Ricky Davis, who I coached in Charlotte. I got to coach
Yeah.
him again.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a young group.
Yeah.
So when I first got there, I was the head coach of the summer league team, and it was LeBron's rookie year, and it was my starting lineup was DeJuan Wagner, um, LeBron, D. Miles, Sagana Diop, and Carlos Boozer, and
Bulls. Yeah.
and that was fun. That was fun because those guys were, and I was trying to because back then, when you're young, you're just trying to coach. You're trying to do so
Yeah.
much, and
Mm-hmm.
so I had them running like UCLA cuts and pass and
Yeah.
move and screen, and they just
They
wanted to
on the
go.
run, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
come
Doing
on,
what you
man.
doing?
Exactly. Why are you putting all these plays in? Just let us hoop. So I
Yeah.
had LeBron playing the one,
Mm-hmm.
and it was great because the thing that he has done, and from day one, is he's a gifted passer and he makes
Mm-hmm.
everybody on the court better.
Absolutely.
So being with those guys and learning from those guys and being around him and just how bright he was as a rookie. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into all the guys that I've coached, but
Yeah.
the one thing about those gifted, like those special ones, are they're so smart and they get it right away.
Right.
Like coaching LeBron, like I could tell him to look for something, or maybe you have the drop step baseline this time, or maybe just try like a double jab and be able to go, and he's got it. Like
Mm-hmm.
you only have to tell him once,
Yeah.
and like walkthroughs
Mm-hmm.
and that sort of thing. Like guys like him, you better be on your stuff when you're walking through the
Yeah.
opponent's plays or your plays because he's on it. He's got it. So
Right.
so that makes you better being
Right.
around greats and being around guys like that. So that was a great experience going to Cleveland and working with those young guys. I got to work with older guys like Eric Snow and
Yeah.
uh, shoot, a bunch of guys. Drew Gooden, he was a young fella back
Yes, he
then.
was, man.
Kevin
Shout out
Ollie.
Drew Gooden, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I've been
Sure.
around some really, really good guys and good players. was one of my favorites because
Oh,
he could really score. He's before his time, and
yeah,
he's more of a mid-range scorer, but could score. And he got sick and
yeah,
wasn't able to play for us. But
yeah.
special guys, man,
Yes,
special.
he was. Shout out to Juan Wagner. So you said New Orleans wasn't the first time that you guys got
Hmm.
fired. So obviously it happened in Cleveland,
Yeah,
and then so I think you scouted in Washington that next year, and then you went out to Golden State um, with Don Nelson. With that, with that experience out there, so you've been an East Coast kid all your life, and now you're out there out in the Bay Area with some young heads out there too, and playing for this old school coach. And I think Nelly's one of the best basketball minds ever to come through, man. So talk about your years out in Golden State.
yeah, that was a great time. I mean, of going from getting let go in Cleveland, which wasn't great. When quick quick story when my dad, we were, I think we were 34 and 30 when he got let go, and so they called him upstairs, and he went upstairs thinking they were just wanting to talk about something, and he came back in the office. He was he was like, "You'll never guess what happened." We were like, "What?" He was like, "I just got fired." And he looked at me. He was like, "And you did too." I was like, "Oh man, okay, well, good things happen." One thing that my dad always says is, good things happen when you least expect." And I was able to hook on with Washington, like you said, and then went to Golden State. And at the time, one of the reasons I was able to go to Golden State with Nelly and my dad were obviously close. They played together with the Celtics, but Barron was in Golden State at the
Yeah.
time, and I guess the year before they had some problems with BD or whatever. And he's another one, super smart. So you have to come correct with those guys. You got to be straightforward. You got to know what you're talking about. There will be times where you got to put your arm around them, but you also got to let them know um, if they're doing the wrong thing. So Barron and I have always had a great relationship, and he was one of the reasons that I was able to go out to Golden State. And when I first got out there, it was good, working for Nelly. He's Nelly, he's an older guy, and but he had such an ability to be adaptable and to play in a new way. He was an older guy, but he was playing how we're playing now. He was just so far ahead of the times, and as far as the way that he handled guys, number one, and the way he thought about the game, he just thought about it in a different way. So when I first got there, we had Mike Dunleavy, Troy Murphy, Barron, Jay Rich. Monte was second year, and we made the trade we traded Murph and Mike Dunleavy to Indiana for Al Harrington and Steven Jackson, and that changed a lot
I
for
bet.
our team because we had a little bit more swagger with Stack Jack on our team, and Al and Barron and Jay Rich, and young Monte with no tattoos coming off the bench, and slowly but surely they believed in what Nelly was telling them about as far as playing fast and playing with space and playing downhill. But we also had that grit and that toughness
Yeah,
with Barron and Jack. So those guys
yeah.
led us, and I think we won maybe 15 of our last 18 to make it to the playoffs that year, and meet Dallas of all teams in
Oh,
the first round, and that was the
yeah.
We Believe team.
We
It's funny
believe.
because when I'm here in Dallas, I say, "Yeah, oh yeah, that was the We Believe year." They're like, "We don't call it the We Believe year here." I'm like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, my
man.
bad." Yeah, but
Man.
but it was good. You know, we had Matt Barnes on that team
Yeah.
and Andres Beach,
Hmm.
like really great group of guys and
Yeah.
different and not easy to coach, but
Yeah.
just solid basketball players. And Nelly just had a way of letting guys play, but also letting them, you know, have feel like they had ownership over what was going on, and
Mhm.
those guys definitely did.
So, I talked a little bit about you being in Cleveland and having the opportunity to coach a kid who was going to come in and change the game in LeBron. But while you out, before you left Golden State, you had an opportunity to work with another kid who was coming and kind of, you know, revolutionized the game too, and Steph Curry.
Yep.
Talk about your relationship with coaching him. His pregame dribbling routine is kind of legend, and he's going on record saying that you helped him develop that routine. Talk about your relationship with Steph and his early years and his development, what you saw in him.
Yeah, well, Steph, I had known Steph when he was little
Mm-hmm.
because my dad coached Dell in Charlotte,
Mm-hmm.
and he went to Charlotte Christian where my nephew went. So I had known him. We didn't really like know each other very well, but we had met before. So when he
Mm-hmm.
came um, to the Warriors, I was like, hey, you got if you need a place to stay, if you need a meal, if you just need someone to talk to, I'm here. I
Mm-hmm.
know all your people. I know Dell and Sonia and your brother and your sister. So,
Yeah.
make it feel like you're someone from home
Mm-hmm.
here. And we just clicked right away. He just another super smart player, but very different than Barron and very different than LeBron because he didn't have the physical gifts that those guys had. So it was much more of a let's figure this thing out um, process with Steph than it was with those other guys. Um, Thinking about angles, thinking about because at that time he was trying to run a team, and Jack was there and Monte was there, and
Mm-hmm.
there was still some personalities, according to Getty,
Mm-hmm.
still some personalities that he had to deal with as a young point guard coming in. So we spent a lot of time on the court. We spent a lot of time off the court, whether he came over and ate or we went to
Mm-hmm.
church or whatever. We
Mm-hmm.
just spent a whole bunch of time together. And at that time, we had young guys. So we had him and Anthony Morrow, um, who went to Charlotte Latin, who so they played against each other in high school,
Right.
and he was a young guy and just trying to make it. And we had C.J. Watson, who was young and trying to make it, and Anthony Tolliver, who was young and trying to make it. Clint Azabuki. So we had some older guys, but then once Jack got let go or got traded, we were mostly a young team. So
Mm-hmm.
those young guys just came together, and we would work out and have fun and play ones and do whatever we could to help those guys get better. I worked with a
Right.
guy named Rico Hines
Yeah.
who is now with Sacramento Kings, and Rico is one of the best at it. I mean, as far as
Mm-hmm.
player development. And him and Barron and Matt Barnes went to college together at
Yeah.
UCLA. So Rico is like one of my best friends and one of my mentors. It's funny, he calls me his mentor and I call him my mentor because I just learned so much about player development and the energy that you need when it comes to player development and the connection that you need to make with players when it comes to that. So, yeah, when I first started with Steph, he was bouncing those two balls off his feet and
Yeah.
struggling and whatnot. But he always had super confidence and super skill. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could always shoot it, but his confidence is something that's like, I mean, he thinks he can do anything on the court, which got him into trouble as a young player. But the older he got, the more he was able to do. And then once he changed his body, he worked with these
Right.
guys in Charlotte, and they really helped him with his body. That's where he took off and he became MVP caliber player.
Right. Absolutely. So in 1999, you got a call from your dad, And then you got another call from your dad to come back to Charlotte. So you come back to Charlotte with him, and now you're kind of stepping up a little bit. You're not just on the bench anymore. You're actually coaching some of the games, and your dad is becoming the assistant. So once again, it was like we're talking about, I got to ask my dad, like, he took a big leap of faith to bring me in as a scout. And now he's taking another big leap of faith and saying, oh, I'm not going to coach this game. You coach this game. So, obviously, dad got a lot of confidence in you. But talk about, like, you come in to be the assistant. Obviously, you're always going to be there for your dad, but he really put you in a position, to coach some games and put you in charge. Like, what's the difference between, for those who don't know, what's the difference, all right, to be an assistant and now being the one that's calling the shots in the game? Like, talk about that,
Oh
Joe.
man, it's night and day from being at the time we weren't very good, and he got thrown out of a game, and I brought the team back, and we won the game. So the next day, Rod Higgins and my dad called me in the office, and they were like, "What do you think about coaching a few games this year to get your feet wet?" And I was like, all right, let's go.
Let's
I didn't
do it.
know, I really didn't know any better. And I knew when I was in Golden State that Don Nelson had done the same thing with Keith Smart. Keith Smart was the lead assistant, and there were games where Nelly let Keith coach, and Nelly had done that with Avery Johnson and Dallas as well. So they did it with me in Charlotte. It was hard. It was really hard. I mean, coaching's the difference between there's levels. Like being an assistant coach and during an NBA game, you're just trying to help your head coach and you're trying to help your players, and you're not thinking about much else. And there are times where you can enjoy the game. There are times where you can zone out a little bit, and there's times where um, your decisions don't really make that much of a difference during the game. And then you take that next seat over, and you're thinking of, like, your mind is just going 1,000 miles a minute, and you're trying to manage the players, manage the substitutions, do call the right plays, and um, there's just so many things that you need to be on top of as a head coach, and that those first few times that I did it, I struggled. I really struggled, and I didn't know. You don't know whether to sit down or stand up. You don't know where to put your hands, or you don't know whether to call the referee by ref or his first name or his last. Like, and then you're trying to sub players out who don't necessarily come out, want to come out. So it was hard, but the guys who I had were great. I had Kemba and Bismack Biyombo and Corey Maggette, and they were great to me. And one of the main guys who really helped me through this time, and it might surprise a lot of people, is Tyrus Thomas. He really believed in me as a coach. And I believed in him as a player. And I had known Tyrus for a while through some family connections. But he was the one guy who, like, really, really helped me with the other players and helped me, like, pull me aside, like, "Coach, we can't do that right now, or maybe we should do that another day, or maybe it's time to cut practice," or like little stuff like that. So it really is the players that you have, and for me, I'd been preparing for a long time to coach and to coach games. So it was hard, but I was ready for it, and it ended up being okay. It was a hard season just because we were so bad, but I learned a lot from that, and it prepared me for the future for sure.
Okay, so, and then you stayed on and worked with Steve Clifford,
Yeah,
who I think is also a
yeah, he's great.
great
He's great.
basketball mind. And you were thrust into that position again. He had some health issues, and you had to take over the team for a stretch too. But I'm assuming that this situation that Rod Higgins and your dad put you in prepared you. You were more prepared when you had to take over for Cliff during that time.
Absolutely. I mean, that time made it so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Kimba was the only one left.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of helped me through that time as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I was so ready when Cliff got sick. I mean, I had already had I interviewed with Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and got close to that job when Mike D'Antoni got it, and then I interviewed with the Hornets when they hired Mike Dunlap. I interviewed
Mm-hmm.
that time. So I had already kind of been formulating my thoughts as far as what I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to do when I was a head coach,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of thinking through all of the different things that you have to do when you're a head coach. So when Cliff got sick, I was prepared. It was abrupt, so it
Yeah.
wasn't comfortable. Um, I didn't have a training camp or anything, and I was basically I kept telling Cliff, like, I'm just trying to keep this afloat for when you come back.
Right.
And we started off slow. I think we won our first game, but we started off kind of slow. And
Mm-hmm.
I learned so much, dealing with players, dealing with media, I mean, at the time we had Nick Batum was on the team, Dwight Howard was on the team, Kemba, obviously, and Marvin Williams, who was great in the locker room. So he had a good MKG, who I'm coaching right now. So I had
Okay.
a really good group of guys. So they made it easier for me. But
Mm-hmm.
doing that and coaching those 21 games really, really let me know that I'm capable of being a head coach in the NBA and doing all the things that it takes to make a team successful, whether it's getting on guys during the timeout, getting on guys during halftime, pumping guys up, telling them what they need to hear
Absolutely.
during a timeout, pulling a guy aside during a game and helping them, or having a meeting with a player who's unhappy because he's not playing as much,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with your staff, having staff
Mm-hmm.
meetings and delegating
Mm-hmm.
and trying not to do, because I'm so much I don't know if it's control freak or what, but I just want to do it all myself. And
Right.
as a head coach, it's impossible to do it all yourself. So
Absolutely.
the people that you
Absolutely.
have around you make it really, really, it's very important. So that helped me be a better assistant coach going through that. So that was a really, really good experience. I think we ended up 9-12 during that time, which was decent. I wish we could have won a few more games,
Right.
but it was good.
Always.
It was good.
Always, always. So I got a couple questions. So what's been happening on here is IG only gives you a certain amount of time before they kick you off. So hopefully, if we get through these questions and we get kicked off, you'll come right back on
Oh, for sure.
and we'll finish up. So if you guys are watching right now, when this thing runs out, we're gonna jump right back on. So jump
Yeah,
back
yeah,
in here with us.
yep.
So a couple things that that I want to get out there is, like I said, we've talked about your dad, throughout this whole thing and everything. So it's one thing, for your dad to give you the opportunity. So now you have the opportunity. Now that you have the opportunity, you got to now make good with the opportunity that you have to be successful. So however you got the job is how I got the job. That's what it is. It ain't about what you know all the time. It's about who you know, and we all know that. But once you get that position, now I got to show that I deserve to have this position. And we talked about the big shadow that your dad cast, you know what I'm saying? So talk about what it was like being a coach. But there was some people out there that be like, oh, he's only the coach because Paul SIlas is his dad. So talk about that, being a coach and constantly having to prove yourself, of how good you actually were as a coach, and not to be looked at as Stephen SIlas, not Stephen SIlas, Paul SIlas' son.
Yeah, it was hard. It was definitely hard, but you know what it did is it motivated me and it made me so much better, like trying to check all those boxes. And I'm not sure if this is like if this is a healthy way of going about it, but I just had a chip on my shoulder, and I just wanted to prove people wrong all of the time. So if there was a clinic that I could do, I was going to do the clinic. If there was a group that I could talk to, I was talking to the group to work on my um, my skills, whether it's presenting to a group or working somebody out. There's always something that I was trying to develop, trying to get better at. So
Right.
I could prove people wrong, So
Right.
I was always at the early in my career. Every summer I would do something, whether it was basketball without borders, whether it was
Yes.
going overseas and doing a clinic overseas, or some sort of clinic for the NBA, or anything that I could do. I was doing it because yeah, I knew that was the perception, and people probably at some level were right about it because I wasn't necessarily ready, but shoot, I'm gonna prove that my dad was right, and
Right.
that's how people need to look at it. I think because I'm like I said earlier, people are always asking me how do I get in, or can you help me with this position, or can you help me with that position, and you want to be able to prove whoever helps you right
Mm-hmm.
because it's not an easy thing to put yourself out there and help somebody. So you need to do everything you can to prove to people that you can do the job even better than they had expected. So it was hard, and there were players who didn't listen to me because of they thought I was gifted the job, and there were media members, and there were articles written, and I think
Yeah.
even Stephen A might have said something, but whatever,
Mm-hmm.
man. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna do my thing and work and work and work, and that's what it is.
Absolutely. So my man Ron Golson wants to know what are the responsibilities of an assistant coach?
Whew. So much. Well, right now with Dallas, I'm the offensive coordinator. So what I do during practice is I'll take half of the team on my court, and we'll go through new plays, we'll go through adjustments, we'll go through maybe we're playing the Clippers tomorrow night, so go over how they're going to defend our stuff, the switching, and maybe there's certain guys that we want to go at, so we'll go through that, and any offensive film that needs to be shown to the team, I'll do that. Um, I'll put together the edit, whether it's 10, 15, 20 clips, and show it to the team. We split up uh, the game plans as far as each assistant coach will go through and do the game plans as far as who your matchups are, what to expect, the video that goes along with it. We'll do walkthroughs with the opponent's plays that goes back to what the advanced scout sends us. Then the individual stuff, working with the players on a daily basis, whether it's video work, whether it's on the court. Um, and then we have coaches meetings where we're always talking about, the team and the spirit of the team and what can we do better? What do we need to improve on? So we're constantly meeting on how to make things better. So it's a lot. There's a lot to it, and I'm missing a ton of stuff. Uh, but it's mainly the offense for me, the individual stuff for each player, the game planning, and then the overall team stuff.
Got you. Got you. So right now, before they kick us off, I'm gonna end this right now. But
Okay.
as soon as I end this, everybody jump right back on. We're gonna take more questions from Steve.
All right.
All right. Dre, what's up, man? So the next question, thank y'all for coming back with us. The next question, my man JJ wants to know what what's different about the assistant's role during the season and in the off season.
Okay. During the season, it's the next game, the next scouting report, the next workout, you know, and you really, really have to be locked in on your time, as far as taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, and making sure that every box is checked. So making sure that my edit is done, is ready, it's trimmed. I have all my slides. I'm prepared. I've watched it 2 or 3 times. So as I'm going through it with the players, um, there's no stammers, no stutters. There's ability to answer questions. There's everything. Um, so there is the team aspect during the season, which is it takes a lot of your time, takes a lot of your thoughts. And then there's the individual aspect, and then there's the game planning aspect. Like I said, in the off season, it's much more the individual. There's the individual work with guys who are going to stay around during the summer. That's what's so different now than when I first started. Because when I first started, summer times were like off basically.
Right,
Guys weren't coming
right,
back, and
right.
there wasn't the emphasis on player development like there
Mm-hmm.
is now. So now that there's so much emphasis on player development, it really is like a year-round deal where guys will get 3, 4 weeks off after the season's over, then they're coming back, and we're going to get this work in on the court, and then we're going to work on stuff in the film room and making sure that they're well-rounded with their game and that sort of thing. But then there's also summer league, where I've been a head coach for summer league a handful of times, but I've been assistant coach for summer league a few times. Patrick Ewing was my head coach, and I
Yeah,
was honored to just sit next to him
Big Pat.
and yeah, enjoy being with him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also draft workouts that you have to do. And like I said, when I worked for the Retired Players Association, I had so many hats, and there are so many things that I've done that I had to do, and that's prepared me for this. So I've done player development, I've done video, I've done draft workouts, been an offensive coordinator, I've been a defensive coordinator. There's so many different hats that, especially an assistant coach who's been doing it for a long time, wears. But during the season, it's very focused on the schedule and kind of making it through and making sure you're prepared. And in the off season, it's preparing for the next season. So whether it's individually with a player, whether it's with Coach Carlisle, talking about offense or where the league is going as far as spacing or different actions or that sort of thing. That's much more of a global look at it. Where during the season you're really honed in on certain certain aspects of individual as well as team game.
Okay. So, um, we've heard, we've watched numerous shows, and, a lot of people talk about like what it was like playing with the GOAT, Michael Jordan. So obviously you never played with Mike, but tell us what it was like to work for Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Because you heard what say, you heard he was a killer, with teammates and everything. Like, what I'm saying. But now he's an owner. Was he different? Was his style as an owner different than his style when he was a player?
Yeah, well, when I first got to Charlotte, he was practicing with us because my dad, his style was very different than Larry Brown, and
Mm-hmm.
we would play a lot. We would
Mm-hmm.
scrimmage a lot. So MJ loved it, and he just wanted to compete, and he would take whichever team,
Mm-hmm.
and he would put on the the penny
Mm-hmm.
and go out there and hoop. And so that was my first experience with MJ was coaching him
Mm-hmm.
in scrimmages,
Okay.
which is crazy because he is so competitive
Yeah.
and still had his fadeaway and just, the confidence that he has to this day is like,
Right.
I mean, special. So he is as competitive as a person as I've ever been around.
Right.
He is great, super, super loyal. Like, so when I was in Charlotte, I coached under three different people. I coached for my dad, I coached for Mike Dunlap, and then Steve Clifford. And that didn't have to happen, and
Right.
I know Michael had something to do with that. So I have nothing but great things to say about working for Michael. When we were down and we were losing, maybe he was frustrated. We were all
Mhm.
frustrated, but he has a way of pulling you to the side and telling you you're doing a good job, or pulling you to the side and telling you have to do better. And I've been
Right.
on both sides of that
Mhm.
with him. So it takes a while for the Air Jordan mystique to
Absolutely.
kind of wear off, and I wouldn't say that it ever did for me. Looking
Right.
at him, you're
It's always
always
Mike.
checking out exactly. You're always checking out what shoes he has on that day, or
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um, I always used to say when he would walk into a room, you'd be like, "Man, did the lights get brighter in here?" Or like
Mike.
it's just something about him that brings energy and brings um, something special to the room. So working for him was awesome. Even though we had some pretty down years in Charlotte, I enjoy working for Michael Jordan.
Awesome. So my man Danaeus King wants to know how often do players watch film? Like, is that a big thing?
Yeah, every day.
Mm-hmm.
After each game, we'll pull guys aside and watch their individual film, and then depending on the coaching staff with Coach Carlisle, we watch quite a bit of film. Other coaches, they don't watch quite as much as a group. So we watch after every other game or so. Um, we'll watch as a group, and then individually, the players will watch with the coach pretty much every game. Some guys more, some guys less. Vets not quite as much. Some vets, that's just been their routine for a long time, so that's what they do. Young guys, you make their routine for them as an assistant coach, so they're gonna watch. The hard part is if a guy hasn't been playing a lot,
Mm-hmm.
kind of trying to be creative and figure out ways for him to watch things and get better.
Right.
So watching other guys, or picking guys out from other teams that have similar games to them, doing stuff like that. And with guys like that, or guys who haven't been playing quite as much,
Mm-hmm.
you try to make it to where it's not a chore for them. So it might not be an everyday thing for the 12th or 13th man on the floor, because you don't want it to seem like punishment, but you also want them to know that you're trying to help them get better. So maybe it'll be just one clip, or maybe we won't watch today, we'll watch tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Guys are definitely very locked into their own games. It's up to the coaching staff to get them locked into the team game, but also they after each game, the game usually for most guys gets loaded onto an iPad for them, so they can watch on their own.
Okay. Good. And strength and conditioning, how has that changed over the year for guys? 'Cause obviously, like with technology, the recovery now, like so from 1999 to right now, like how has all that changed for the guys? Because obviously, like the athletes, I think are more fit, jumping higher, running faster. Like there's just more out there to help. Like how have you seen that changed over the years?
It's changed so much. We used to have, when I first started, we had a guy named Chip Sigmund. He was our strength and conditioning coach in Charlotte. Here in Dallas, we have one, two, three full-time strength and conditioning people,
Wow.
and then two other like intern type people. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely evolved, and there's so much, as you said, technology
Right.
that's that's helped guys with rehab or maintenance or whatever. But it's just such a big part of it. And there used to, I wouldn't say there used to be an adversarial relationship between strength coaches and basketball coaches, but right now there's really has to be so much synergy between the performance staff and the coaching staff. So guys are getting what they need in the weight room as well as on the court. And if a guy skips the weight room and comes out on the court, it's up to the assistant coach to be like, no, you got to go back. Go ahead and get your lift in. I'll be here. We'll get your shots up afterwards. So, but it's evolved so much to where it's not just weight room work. It's pool work. It's nutrition. It's, so many different aspects of performance that that there's an expert for pretty much on every team, and it's a big deal because it's a big commitment that teams make into the players, and for the players, in order to make it through an 82 game season, they have to be on top of it.
Okay, so I'm going to ask these last two questions, and then I'm going to go into my one possession so we can get Steve up out of here. That strength and conditioning coach question came from Dave Monsell, aka B.
Who?
1992.
Wow, yes, sir.
1992. So my guy Joe Finline of NYG Hoops wants to know, with the two-way deals now.
Yeah.
Obviously it's never easy to make it to the league. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it's not an easy thing to do, but is it a little bit easier because of the two-way contracts right now as opposed to about 10 years ago?
Oh man, I don't know because when I was like I said, when I was with Golden State, we would just take whoever the number one scorer was in the D League at the time. We just take him and sign him to a 10-day. And if he
Okay.
was good, we'd keep him. If he wasn't, we'd send him back. I think Azubuike was one of those guys, and
Yeah.
Tolliver was
Yeah.
one of those guys. I think even C.J. Watson was one of those guys. Um, so now with the two ways, we have a lot more um, contact with those guys. They're around a lot more. We get to know them a lot better. Um, but I'm not sure if it helps them or not to stick. You know,
Right.
I think there's just so much opportunity out there for guys who are in the G League or overseas, or everybody gets seen. So everybody's scouting and trying to find that next one. So I'm not sure what the percentage of guys who have been two ways get their two ways converted is, but it's not a bad thing at all because those are guys who come in, and we've played against teams where they have two-way guys starting or two-way
Right.
guys who are
Absolutely.
contributing, and we haven't necessarily had that here with our two-way guys, but it's a good thing. It's definitely a good thing, and it helps them. It gives
Absolutely.
them a taste. It gives them a carrot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely it does. So this last question is coming from Plato Brown, aka Abdul Torrance.
Wow.
Yeah, another blast from
Wow.
the past. They
Oh
all out here
man.
tonight.
Shoot.
They all out here. Um, what three things, what three characteristics must you have, in your opinion, to be an NBA coach?
Just three. Um, whew. You gotta be a worker. You gotta be a grinder. Um, there's no substitute. And one thing about NBA players is they know. They know if you know, and they know if you
Yeah,
don't know, and they know right
right,
away.
right.
So working at your craft and making sure that you're on top of your stuff. I'd say work ethic is number one. Number two is probably relatability. At some level, especially in the NBA, you got to get guys who have been told a lot of times that they've been doing the right things, or haven't necessarily been coached hard for a very long period of their life. that they're going to be coached hard and they're going to be held accountable, and you're only doing it to help them get better and further their career. So the better you can have, the more relatable, or I wouldn't say, you definitely don't, there has to be a level of respect. So it's really a fine line of being their friend and being their coach, but they have to respect you, number one, but they also have to like you. You know,
Right.
um, there aren't very many assistant coaches who players don't like. You know, they don't stick around very often.
Right.
And number three, especially for my position, is time management. And you know this better than anybody. I'm not very good at it. Like, I try as hard as I can to stay in touch with all my best friends, and to be on top of my family obligations and my work obligations. And it's unfortunate a lot of times for all of us that our work a lot of times will take over everything, and it
Absolutely.
becomes the
Absolutely.
number one priority on a day to day. Obviously, it's not on a global basis, but
Right.
on a day to day, it'll take over. So time
Yeah.
management. If you're able to tackle, yourself, and making sure that you're good, making sure your family's good, and also making sure that you're fulfilling your obligations at work, especially in such a demanding position where you're trying to help the team get better, help individuals get better, and trying to win games, which is number one when it comes to coaching, then you're doing a good job.
Absolutely. So usually in my one possession segment, I give 24 seconds. But there's
Okay.
no way you can. There's no way. There's no way. I'd be shocked if you can answer these in 24 seconds.
You know, I'm a
So
man
here
of
it
few
goes.
words. I'm a man of few words. I can get
And so now, but see,
it.
I got one. You might have to think. I told you, you got to put your thinking cap on for me. So, and it's funny. My last question, my man Ian out in Cleveland, who runs the Kenny Anderson Basketball Showcase, wants to ask the same exact question that I wanted to ask. So it's crazy. So my
Okay.
first question is, best player you ever coached?
Oh, I'd say it's I gotta go. I wish I could say one person, but Luca and LeBron and Steph, a three-way tie.
Luca is coming for sure, man. Luca's
Yeah,
coming
he's
for
good.
sure.
He's so
Best
good.
team you coached?
Best team I coached. The best team I coached probably was the Golden State We Believe team with BD, Stack Jack, Jay Rich, Monte, Andres, Matt Barnes,
Yes,
Al,
yes.
all those guys. That was
Super
the
tough
best team.
team.
Yeah,
Super
they were
tough
good.
team. Them guys, they were real ones. They were
Yeah.
real ones. And here's the question. Your top five that you've coached by position.
Oh man. Uh, okay.
Yeah, that's
Well,
gonna take more than
BD,
24 seconds to say, okay, BD at the one.
BD at the one, Steph at the two,
Okay.
Luca at the three,
Mm-hmm.
LeBron at the four.
Okay.
I need a five, man. Five, man. I coached Dwight. Um, I put Eldon Campbell at the five.
Big L, yes. Big L did at the five. I thought you were gonna say Ghana. You know Ghana got a place in my
Oh,
heart.
I
But
love
yeah,
him.
Big
Yeah,
L
yeah,
did.
yeah. You know
Yeah,
Ghana's coming off my bench. I love
Big
Ghana.
L did. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh
Um,
shoot! No, I can't. I can't. I can't. I gotta put KP. I gotta put KP at the five. My bad.
okay, yeah, okay. We're gonna stretch the floor a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta put KP
Yeah,
at the five.
stretch the floor a little bit. Okay, okay. I like that. I like that. Shout out Sean Ward. What's up, baby? Down in DC. So that's going to conclude the Positive Impact podcast for tonight. Brother, you know how much I love you. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you for having me,
Sharing with
man.
us. No doubt about it, man. And hug that wife and them girls for me, man.
Oh,
And
no
we'll talk
doubt.
soon.
All
Thank
right,
you,
sounds
everybody, for
good.
coming out. All right.
All right.
Later.